Golf, John, and no shirt. Dennis McQuistion, John Bowles, and I took up golf sometime during my sophomore year. Jack Pippins might have encouraged us to play at the Terrell Country Club. We loved competing with each other and before long could all shoot in the upper 80s. John always wanted to get a suntan. He also never knew the meaning of good taste. He would strip off his shirt, pull off his pants, and wear a European-style bathing suit on the golf course. He had these huge bone transplant scars on his arms and legs, so he was quite a sight compared to the nattily-attired country club set. When one of these middle-aged golfers was forced to join us to make a foursome, you could see his thoughts on his face. Most of the time we would end up waxing him on the scorecard. It was great fun. There was a course in Dallas called Bobolinks. We decided to give it a try one Saturday. This course had a 19th hole and drinking was allowed on the course. John went in and bought a case of beer. We rented 2 carts, loaded the beer, and started off on the first hole. Before the day was over, golf turned into kart racing. This was far from our normal golfing. However, normally we were very competitive. We enjoyed playing, and we enjoyed winning even more. The competitive spirit between us guys still lives today. Competing is fun, winning is not everything, but when you do, you should enjoy it to the fullest. Atomic bomb in jockstrap. I am sure you all have heard the story about guys who put hot stuff in some person's underwear or something. Well, I got the same story. One of the guys managed to rub atomic bomb into about 15 of the football players' jockstraps before practice. It only took about 10 minutes on the field when suddenly guys were sprinting for the locker room. It was pretty funny later, but at the time it was an emergency. I was one of the sprinters. Every school has that guy who will do anything on a dare. We had one too. $5 says you won't run around the field in your jockstrap. 10 or 15 guys kicked in and the money was on the bench in a matter of seconds. It was only 4 o'clock, kids were still hanging around school, it was broad daylight, no one thought he would really do it. He hit the locker room door in a dead run, naked except for a white elastic jockey strap and tall white athletic socks. We all laughed so hard our sides hurt. Summer football practice. Football in a small Texas town is always serious business. Practice started several weeks before classes. It was always terribly hot, a setting for the annual summer football practice ordeal. The theory was, the more you suffered from thirst, the more you suffered from pain and soreness, the more you suffered from injury, the more you suffered from mental abuse and anguish, the better football player you would be. We would practice 3 hours in the morning, rest, drink iced tea all day, then practice 3 hours in the late afternoon. It was the most extended agony I have been through from then to now. Fight with Charles Futrell. I never thought of myself as a fighter. I would have liked to have thought of myself as a lover, but had better sense. There was one time that I qualified as a fighter. We were practicing basketball in the gym one afternoon after school. The coach had left us unattended and the practice had deteriorated into doing whatever the hell you wanted to. I noticed Charles Futrell leave the gym and enter the hallway of the school. For some reason I followed. As I watched, he went from one locker to the next, taking personal things, pens, etc. from other people's lockers. In those days, locks were not considered necessary. Stealing was not standard procedure and not accepted behavior. It wasn't my locker, but it must have offended me deeply, because I told him to put the stuff back. He laughed and said, "Make me." From that point on it was a macho, you push me, I push you, type of thing, that progressed to fists. The judges probably would have awarded him the bout, but I did get a few good licks in. A slightly black eye for a few days, a little embarrassment, and I never felt the same about Mr. Futrell again. Sex in the 50s. The sexual revolution of the 70s and 80s has changed the relationships between boys and girls quite a lot from those nostalgic 50s. There were always a few bad girls, easy girls, but the good girls did not take sex as a casual thing. If a good girl had sex, she was in love and expected to get married. Girls were less aggressive, the boy was expected to make the moves. Dating has changed also. You could have a date with one girl, and have another date with a different girl next week. A date was not a commitment to some kind of relationship. I am not saying that all girls are more sexual, just that it seems to be more accepted by the group now. Ghosts in the cemetery. The night started off as a group date of 3 couples jammed into my mother's '53 Chevy. I was driving and showing out to my new girlfriend, Brenda Green, with how fast the country road corners could be handled by an expert such as I. Not far from her house, in unfamiliar territory, a 90-degree turn appeared and the car proceeded to remain straight and into a barbed wire fence. No harm done, but there, nearby, appeared an old country cemetery. Another chance for us men to show our bravery by escorting the ladies for a tour of the old graves and stones. Of course, we had no flashlights, only the light of the stars to guide our steps. The girls clinged to our arms as we assured them that ghosts did not really exist. About that time, an ill-defined white blob started to appear from behind one of the large stones. In more modern terms, it appeared as floating ectoplasm as in Ghostbusters movies. Another also came into sight and they seemed to move toward the group as the terror started to grow in even the brave young men. The screams suddenly emerged from the three young ladies and my legs were paralyzed as the blobs approached. Then the sound, a crunching, or should we say munching, could be heard. Yes, it was a couple of Holstein cows, grazing in the abandoned graveyard. Their black body concealed their form until only 20 or so feet away, but the big white spot on their side certainly made for a realistic floating ghost. Senior trip. The senior trip for the class of '59 was to New Orleans. We all knew that legal age in Louisiana was 18 as compared to 21 in Texas. Invitations were sent out for sponsors to chaperone the trip, and who should volunteer but my parents. Oh well, it's okay, they are fun people. 24 students, a 23-year-old band director, a 55-year-old lay preacher, mom and dad. We hit the road in a big bus, loaded with eats, soft drinks, fruit, someone injected a bunch of oranges with Everclear, and a few hidden booze bottles. It's a long way to New Orleans and we partied all the way. Upon arrival, mom and dad decided that if they were to chaperone, they would have to join in the revelry. The band director was actually the instigator of much of the partying, and the lay preacher caught the first flight home. Everyone was to meet at our room for an arrival party. After an hour or so and the arrival of most of the student group, someone asked about the whereabouts of Jackie. Remember, Jackie has no arms or legs. I rolled him up to his room, volunteered one of the guys. I thought Welch would bring him up to the party. I never said that to him, says Welch. We decided to go look for him, for he was terribly inebriated when we unloaded the bus. Where could he be though? He can't push the wheelchair even when sober. Gene decides that possibly in his own disadvantaged condition he could have left Jackie on the wrong floor of the hotel. Gingerly we knock on the stranger's hotel room door, no answer. We knock again and hear a familiar gurgling sound. Cautiously we push open the unlocked door to find Jackie lying on the floor beside his overturned wheelchair. He's too drunk to walk on his knees the way he would normally, so he is laughing incoherently and rolling around on the floor like some misshapen blob out of a horror movie. What if that person who had left their room unlocked had returned to find Jackie on their floor? We thought it was funny as hell, loaded Kirkland into his chair, and promptly brought him up to the party. We took the standard tours, the above-ground cemetery, the paddle boat ride, Bourbon Street, and the My Oh My Club. The My Oh My Club was the band director's idea. He did not disclose that this was a club run completely by transvestite young men entertainers dressed as women. My cousin, Jimmy Dozier, was going to join us on the excursion to the nightclub. He had been raised on the farm, never drank alcohol, and socially isolated from girls. He definitely had not encountered transvestites and gay boys. He ate a whole 1/4 pound stick of butter each night, drank like a fish, and partied like a fool. Not having a suit, he had borrowed his dad's wide padded shoulders, vertical stripes, wide-brimmed hat. He looked like a blonde, tow-headed mobster. Douglas Ratcliffe was also coming on the club night tour. He was a nice little shrimp, only about 5'4", and could not have weighed over 100 pounds. Upon arriving at the club and being escorted to our table, it became immediately obvious to most of us that our fearless leader, the band director, had led us into a club full of queers. We were afraid to make any remarks, or even show that we recognized our position for fear that the whole place would attack us. So, sitting there, very uncomfortably, the waiter, or waitress as he would have preferred to be called, arrived to take our drink orders. He was very nice with his long painted nails, silk blouse, tight pants, lipstick, but obviously male. When asked what kind of beer was available, he named off the brands most courteously and with his best lisp. Suddenly, looking up from under his wide-brimmed hat, and in a loud voice for all to hear, Jimmy asked, "What's the matter? You sound like a queer or something." We shrank, we slid under the table, and we died. Like water off a duck's back, he smiled and asked what anyone else would like to drink. The only other memorable event of the night was going to the bathroom. Douglas was afraid to go by himself, and maybe because of his size he needed to go sooner. He kept begging someone to go with him. No one would go because we were all afraid also, and he was too small to afford any reasonable protection. Finally, like a herd of girls headed for the powder room, the whole table got up at one time and headed for the John. We all had visions of being picked up by some voluptuous woman while lounging around on Bourbon Street. My cousin Aubrey had his chance while sitting in one of the clubs watching some strippers on the bar. The tables were tiny, we were there for the show. Mom and I were at one table and Aubrey, by himself, at another close by. The lady of the night strolled up, sat down, put her arm around Aubrey and asked if he would like to buy her a drink. Stammering and surprised, Aubrey turns, points to our table and says, "I don't know, you will have to ask my mother."